WWE 12 was supposed to represent a massive shift in direction in THQ's long-running flagship series of WWE video games that started off as SmackDown and then turned into SmackDown vs. Raw before becoming the current WWE series. And indeed, the amount of hype surrounding this game would have you believe that WWE 12 could possibly be the second coming of past wrestling gaming greatness, the likes of which we haven't seen since the days of WWF No Mercy, or perhaps even WWE SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. However, as most people were made aware, all the hype laid focused on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 versions, with a quick blurb on the side mentioning the release of a Nintendo Wii version of the same game, and not much more than that in that regard. There's a good reason why THQ and the press largely ignored queries regarding the Wii version of WWE 12, because when you sit down and play the game, you'll find that it's nothing more than an incremental update to last year's WWE SmackDown vs. Raw game on the same console. A bit of a shame really, since this was a chance for THQ to truly create something from the ground up for the Wii platform, instead of just recycling a PlayStation 2 conversion that existed, even if it was never going to be as fully featured as its PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360 counterparts. Perhaps I'm being a bit unfair here. After all, the controls have been changed up slightly from last year's SmackDown vs. Raw, returning to a simple grapple button instead of the analog grapple thing they had going for the past few games. I'll admit that this was quite an adjustment to be made after getting used to the analog control scheme to begin with, but eventually I started getting the hang of it. I always preferred grappling at the press of a button than the overly convoluted analog control scheme they had going for the past couple of years. There's also a new breaking point submission system, essentially a meter that gauges how close to submission, victory, or defeat one happens to be, and there's also a limb targeting feature that's kinda cool, I guess. I don't know, it doesn't do much for me. Just about the only thing of worthwhile significance is the obligatory updated roster, which contains a varied selection of current WWE superstars, classic WWE legends, and your usual interchangeable Barbie dolls, or as they call them, divas. And even without the DLC exclusive characters such as Shawn Michaels, Mick Foley, or Michael Cole, why? You still have a varied palette of talent at your disposal. The Rock is in there, CM Punk has cult of personality, Alberto Del Rio looks even more cartoonish here than he does in real life, if that's even possible, and you even have Brock Lesnar in there, so you can have that long-awaited Brock Lesnar versus Stone Cold Steve Austin match at long last. They also tossed in some WCW arenas, so now we have some actual use of the WCW brand aside from a world title that would mean nothing otherwise. Of course, now there aren't any ECW branded arenas unless you use the Extreme Rules arena. It's not the same thing though. And since this Wii version has no create an arena mode, it generally means nothing that you have a wide variety of brands that you could assign superstars to. The lack of arena creation feature is rather disappointing and perplexing as well. Yeah, I get that the Wii isn't the powerhouse console of the modern console era, but some form of arena customization could have been implemented in some way, even if it was just switching ring rope colors and logos. I mean, if the PlayStation 1 could do it, why not the Wii? Oh well, at least there's a ton of championships for you to defend at your fingertips, with plenty of classic titles. Aside from the usual WWE and IC title belts, you also have the WCW World title, the European title, the Cruiserweight title, the Light Heavyweight title, and spray-painted versions of the WWE and World titles. Funny that the spray-painted versions would be separate titles rather than alternate skins for pre-existing titles. Sort of like what they did in SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 when you won the WWE title, you could choose to carry either John Cena's Vanity Spinner belt or the Undisputed title belt, which is a much more proper championship belt, but I digress. However, you could assign different titles to different brands in the Universe mode, swap arenas, and show names even if you desire. You could even swap pay-per-views. It's this kind of customization that I wish was in the prior edition's Universe mode. And I'm glad to see steps to make the Universe mode a truly memorable and personable experience, as opposed to some shallow season mode that means nothing. Of course, a good chunk of this stuff has to be unlocked first. Some of it can be unlocked in the Universe mode rather easily. It could be as easy as just wrestling a match with specific conditions. But the rest of it has to be unlocked by playing through the Road to WrestleMania mode, which I never really cared for. Given the choice between a dedicated story with a select few superstars or an open-ended career mode with any superstar of my choosing, I'd much rather have the career mode. Technically, I'd much rather have the Universe mode, but that's besides the point. Road to WrestleMania stories always seemed outlandish even by WWE's low standards of storytelling. The battles you partake in seem to have ridiculous objectives, and the voice acting is kinda terrible in all honesty, almost like these guys phoned it in when reading their lines. It's a telling sign when a 10-second wrestler rant on an ancient WCW Nitro video game invokes more passion and excitement than a paint-by-numbers script reading that is supposed to be advancing a story forward, but only serves to cure even the most severe cases of insomnia. It's almost like sitting through a 20-minute Triple H promo. If nothing else, the terrible Road to WrestleMania stories only serve to heighten my appreciation for the game's universe mode, which is probably my favorite part of WWE 12. A funny thing considering I never really cared for universe mode in the previous game, but I guess the few refinements made here caused the mode to grow on me a bit. No small feat by any means. Aside from the uninspired voiceover in the story modes, sound quality is alright I suppose, pretty much on par with past entries. Commentary seems updated ever so slightly, so now Michael Cole is as terrible here as he was during his 2011 heel run. Still seems lifeless overall, there's no excitement in any of the commentary, it still just feels a bit flat. And then there are the graphics in WWE 12, which are quite below par. The arena sets are pretty decent, the menus and character portraits are nice and easy on the eyes, but the characters' models look to have a bit of an uneven quality to it. Suffice to say that some models look okayish while others look like crap. Case in point, Alberto Del Rio, who looks like a fucking cartoon. Even more so than he does in real life, but I digress. When you get right down to it, the only reason you want to get WWE 12 on the Wii is because you don't already own a PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360. Compared to those versions, this is a substantially inferior conversion given the poor graphics and overall lack of extensive content and DLC that could have added more to the overall package. On its own merits though, WWE 12 offers the most content compared to its Wii predecessors, with a well-rounded roster of current superstars and past wrestling legends, a crap ton of championships to unlock and defend, the most customizable universe mode you'll come across thus far, and a refined game engine that harkens back to the early days of the SmackDown series on PlayStation 1, or even earlier WWF wrestling games on past consoles. Like I said, there's not much in terms of a major shift and change, and there's not as much content as there should have been, but there is enough content to at least keep you busy. Whether you decide to unlock everything the good old-fashioned way or take the lazy route and get a save file with everything unlocked so that you can start playing with all the cool toys at your disposal. If your only console's a Wii and you want a decent wrestling game, go for it, why not?
Is completely uncalled for. Oh, come on, King. This is the big leagues. This is the WWE.